Hi, I'm Stefan Tornquist.
And I'm Rick Bruner. And welcome back to the latest episode of Measured Response, the half hour that's not wasted. Brought to you by the Research Wonks. This is a podcast focused on advertising and the measurement and analytics side of that industry.
For 16 years, the Wonks has been the premier community for professionals in measurement, research, and marketing analytics. And speaking of being a professional, Rick, you're back to going into the office.
I am. I have taken a day job, and I couldn't be happier to be working with Standard Media Index as their head of insights and analytics. And I continue to wear the other hat with Central Control, which is also an ongoing concern. And Stefan, how about you? Where are you coming to us from? And when are you going to be back in New York?
Good question. So we've been in northern Vermont, and I mean northern Vermont. The closest good food is Montreal, where the border is closed anyway. So we've been here since March of 2020. I don't know when I'm going to get back to an office. You know, I used to have a life where I was in London for a week, a month, and now I've been stuck in Vermont for 2 years. So I kind of envy you going into the office, Rick.
Let's talk about this episode. We take a break from talking about the direct response impacts of privacy and tracking and measurement as being impacted on the industry by Google and Apple. We look at branding as our topic, and we want to talk more about longer term strategies of marketing and measurement and new challenges the market is talking about there.
Yeah, last week you pulled together a panel of real heavy hitters from the Wonks community. Can you tell us who's on the panel and give us a little preview?
Yeah, we have experts from agency, media, and brand perspectives. In particular, Renee Cassard, who is the Chief Research Officer at Omnicom. And John Gibs is the Head of Measurement and Analytics at Spotify. And Vadim Tsemekhman is in charge of ad platforms at Instacart.
It's a great panel, and it wouldn't be possible without the support of Upwave, our sponsor for this episode. Upwave are the brand measurement experts. They've got a machine learning driven platform that provides insights and measurement for long-term brand building. They work with brands like Clorox, American Express, Verizon, and we're very grateful for their support. And with that, I'm going to toss it to Rick in a new t-shirt.
Well, hello, everybody. Thank you. We are here with our guests to have this conversation about branding and brand strategies and how that's changing in today's media market. And we have another great roster of guests for this latest episode of our podcast. And let me have them introduce themselves. So Renee, could you just say a few words about yourself?
Sure. Hi, Rick. Thank you so much for having me today. It's a pleasure to be here with these fabulous wonks. I am the Chief Research Officer for Omnicom Media Group. I've been in the role for about a year, but I've been at Omnicom for a long time, more than a decade, in different capacities of marketing science, thought leadership. Currently, my group really focuses on shifts in consumer sentiment and behavior. So really looking forward to having the conversation and dialogue today.
Fantastic. Vadim.
Yeah, I have been at Instacart for the past 6 months, leading product team on ads, quality optimization, formats, everything on the back end of the ads. And before that, I spent 4+ years doing similar things at Walmart. And before that, I've been in the startup world for EdTech. Great to talk to all of you and to learn from you.
Terrific. And John, welcome.
Hey, thanks, Rick. Thanks for having me. Hey, guys. Nice to see both of you. My name is John Gibbs. I am the Global Director of Audience Research and Measurement at Spotify. My team works to partner with our greatest and best advertisers to help them make the most they can of the platform they have and to drive insights from user behavior on the platform.
Terrific. And a bit later in the episode, we're going to be joined by Ken Archer, who is SVP of Product at Upwave, which is the sponsor of today's episode. And very importantly, let me introduce you to another key panelist, and that is Nike, the advertising wonder dog. Smash that like button right now. So let's get started. We wanted to have a conversation today, reflecting on a time of a lot of change in the advertising and ad tech world. Oops, there he's contributing his thoughts already. There's a lot of attention on targeting and measurement of actions that we think of often as direct response kind of actions that are in a state of, let's say, transition, given the privacy-driven tracking and targeting changes implemented by Apple and the sunsetting of cookies, which we've gotten an industry extension on, but is still coming down the pike, and lots of industry associations and other bodies trying to form new ways of doing things. And while I think a lot of the conversation on that has to do with direct response oriented advertising, it did make me think about how those kind of changes are also affecting the world of brand objectives, brand strategy development, and measuring brand impact. I just wonder, before we get deeper into the brand side of the conversation, if each of you could just share a couple of words on what you see in this period of these changes of tracking and how that is affecting, what are we, 30 or so years into digital advertising. The promise has been one-to-one for a long time. Just can you take a little high-level view and talk through some of your thoughts there? You want to kick us off, Renee?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I think, Rick, when we think about the current state of targeting and measurement, it's really the underlying tech infrastructure within the ecosystem that is going to shift right now, right? And it's a good thing because we've had decades-long, goes with cookies and these technologies, and consumers are becoming more aware and they care more than ever about their data and their privacy and how it's being utilized. I think they're comfortable sharing some things, age, gender, basic demography, right? But when it comes to the way that they're using the internet, to the way that they're using social media, to what they're streaming and watching on streaming television, they have some concerns about the way that's used. And all of these changes are really in the best interest of protecting those consumers. So do I think targeting and measurement are going away? No, I think that the process will still remain, but the infrastructure will evolve. So it's how we do it and where we do it that will be different.
Vadim, how about from your point of view, as I know you're kind of both an advertiser and a media platform from how you sit, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that it presents a paradigm shift for the advertisers. It presents paradigm shifts for measurement, and I think it's a great paradigm shift because it goes back to the roots of measurement and makes it impossible what was relatively easy to do in the past 25 years, but not necessarily the right thing to do. And goes back, forces us to go back to principles and to figure out what is the right thing in terms of the measurement and what is the right, how precisely can we actually target customers, and do we need this kind of targeting that we were obsessed about for the past 20, 25 years, me included.
Me too. I want to come back to some of those thoughts, but John, why don't you jump in here?
Yeah, sort of jumping off of what both the other folks have said. As a platform, Spotify has always been a cookieless platform. We believe very strongly sort of in the privacy of our users overall, and we see the current moves to a more privacy-friendly environment to be an incredibly positive move, like overall for the industry. I do think, as we said, that it brings up a bunch of challenges for measurement. But I think, to echo what Vadim said, I'm not sure those are bad challenges. Cookies weren't really necessarily the best form of data in the entire world. They just happened to be the form of data that we had. And I think that there's a really, really good argument that some forms of probabilistic measurement might actually yield more accurate results than some of the types of direct matches that we've been doing in the past. And so I'm looking forward to sort of the new methodologies and new approaches that we're able to come up with as an industry that not only kind of move us away from sort of a privacy unfriendly environment and kind of tar us with sort of being the privacy unfriendly ones, but also move us to a form of measurement that we think more accurately reflects the user's entire media journey, not just one media at a time, as cookies did.
Yeah. So, as you were speaking, I'm, thinking about brand measurement as different from direct response measurement. And I have spent the last few years, and Vadim has counseled me in that in part, really trying to focus on sales effect measurement. Backing things up, brand means a number of things, but I guess, maybe we can even start there. But the real question I want to ask is, in the light of these changes that are taking place, do you feel like there is more interest and demand from advertisers to refocus measurement maybe more towards brand attributes? If not that they're easier to measure per se, but possibly it's further, and here's where I'm hedging on the definition of branding, but it strikes me that it's, at a position further up the brand or the customer funnel. If brand objectives support value built for the advertiser that is, maybe further off than the conversion that's going to happen in 2 weeks, whether that is, setting somebody on aspirations to buy a luxury car years in the future, or even just, cementing the brand in the mind of the consumer so that when they're shopping, it's more readily at hand. But what do you think just of the first part of the question of, whether there's more emphasis now on those kind of considerations because of what's happening in measurement?
I think what we've seen on our side is not necessarily a rebalancing of the demand. I think advertiser KPIs are more or less what advertiser KPIs are. We haven't seen a significant shift. Where we have seen a shift is where there may have been what I would consider checkbox measurement that just happens to be on the plan because it's always been on the plan. That is tied to attribution. We've begun to see that decrease, where there is a question of the accuracy of the data anyway, and it was sort of questionable whether or not it was really actually important to the plan itself. That we've begun to see some reduction in, but overall, our clients who care about brand, and our clients who care about sales. Some care about the middle, but most tend to care about one or the other. And they've sort of streamlined themselves, I think, organizationally in such a way to be able to attack those problems that a technology change may not be able to overcome immediately.
Renee, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with what John is saying. If anything, if you look at how it was before, comparing brand to direct response, brand strategies have always relied on the more traditional awareness funnels. And, in media, reach was often used as a proxy for awareness, right? And reach is not the best metric, right? It's not a clear funnel anymore. And brands need to have that clear accountability across channels. They have to have clear optimization KPIs, which are the things that perform the best. But they need clear ongoing testing to get to those right KPIs. So I feel that now we are in this unique place where we're working through how to conduct that testing. But if anything, I think there is more emphasis on that accountability toward that direct response side as opposed to the brand.
Yeah, well, that runs counter to kind of what I was expecting. But, you sit there in the position talking to more brands, honestly, than I do. Vadim, you're both working at a brand, and as I understand, you sit on the side of selling advertising to advertisers via Instacart's, probably not, oh, well, I don't know entirely in which environment, and only Instacart's environment, or if you even syndicate that. But why don't you, address it from either side of that equation, if you can speak from Instacart's point of view, but also kind of as the media entity.
Yeah, I can't probably talk about Instacart as marketer because I don't have visibility into that part. I will spend a little time talking about Walmart, where I was on both sides, first on the ad side and then on the MarTech side. Instacart is in some sense a unique place, and it's a very good place for a case study, because all users, the entire customer funnel is happening. It's a closed system. It's a complete and closed system. Advertising is sold on Instacart. Sales are happening on Instacart, and advertising is measured in terms of sales on Instacart. It's as if its own universe. The advertising business is completely closed off and doesn't care about anything that's happening outside, and is able to control and measure everything that is happening there. And we are, I am fascinated by this opportunity. We are just embarking on the upper funnel advertising activity. Most of our business is about sponsored ads, which is search ads, which are low funnel activity, and we can measure them. But when we start talking about upper funnel activity, then the question is, what do we measure? What is the metric of success there? How do we optimize it? And we don't face the problem of identity. We don't face the problems of attribution, but we also face the problem that the brands that we are dealing with are pretty sophisticated, and they understand that because it is a closed system, they don't care about attribution. They want to know that the money that they spend drive more sales, and figuring out how to do it on both in the upper funnel display video and lower funnel search ads is a challenge that is lacking the problem of identity, but it's still the same thing. And actually, it's a good, as I said, it's a good case study, because you could do similar things in other places if you don't attach yourself to the problem of attribution and figuring out, trying to attribute each ad and each user event to some event down the funnel. So this is a very interesting. We can talk more about it. At Walmart, it was a more difficult use case of brands who viewed advertising on Walmart as means on Walmart.com as means to drive store sales. And in that sense, it was a brand advertising. It wasn't direct response advertising. The expectation was that the people would view ads on Walmart.com, let's say, or some of the ads that were placed programmatically on DSPs, let's say, and that those ads would impact customer behavior in stores. And expectation was that Walmart has access to the data, so you better measure how this impact happened. What is this impact? But that part of the business is significantly affected by the changes, privacy changes and everything, because offline to online connection linkage is difficult and is currently relying on third-party cookies. So while by itself it's a very difficult problem to solve, with the changes to privacy changes and deprecation of the cookies and everything, Walmart is facing the same problems that all other players within the industry are facing. And these are good problems to solve, because it eventually pushes everybody towards the proper measurement, the right measurement, the right optimization, and the right ways of optimizing and improving user experience by not showing necessarily showing the ads, annoying ads, but showing the ads that would positively impact customers and provide useful and helpful service to the customers.
I imagine Walmart has a particular kind of challenge from a brand strategy standpoint, in that it's just got brand ubiquity already, in terms of awareness, and Coke and brands like that. Well, why don't we reflect a little bit on, kind of the modern practice of brand strategy and tactics and measurement, in your guys' experience. John, I know you're here at Spotify now, but you've had a long career at points across the industry at Gartner and Nielsen and other stops along the way. What can you just reflect on, how you think brand strategies have evolved and are being practiced today?
And I think focusing on brand strategy as a whole may be too big of a hunk to bite off. So I'm going to try to to bring it down to sort of the brand strategy and media activation. I think that one of the areas where there has been sort of a considerable amount of shift in analysis and shift in consideration over time is the value of context versus the value of creative from a brand measurement standpoint. We tend to look at brand measurement right now sort of as a whole, that the creative and the context are somewhat united in that process. I think that one of the areas that we're going to sort of see increasingly with the changes in technology that we have is that the ability to discriminate context may become a lot more difficult than it is presently as part of an entire campaign. And because that, I think that some of the ways that we look at the overall media mix when it comes to driving brand impact, how we align with specific contexts or specific publishers may become more complicated over time. We may have to look for different types of analyses to help us understand where we get the most brand value from those relationships versus sort of a direct connection you might get off of a one-off study.
Renee, do you guys, you've been in that role a year now, you say, and I know, you've come out of Hearts and Science, was it just before? Do you have any kind of philosophy, either from an Omnicom standpoint or yours, on this question of where brand strategies have been developing and going?
Yeah, I think we are looking at it through the interactions that consumers have with all of the different platforms in their lives today, right? So how people are building brands now is a bit different. There are all these new tricks, right? Based on all the platforms that the consumers are interacting with. Now brands can be built by influencers or content creators and all the people that follow those creators and influencers. And I think, at Omnicom, we are still using data-driven planning to find the right micro influencers and to find the right creators to align the audiences with those influencers, right? But entire brands have now been launched without traditional mass reach media advertising campaigns. Entire brands have been launched as a result of these influencers on these different platforms. So it's pretty fascinating, really, the changes that we've seen from a building brands and brand strategy perspective.
And that's interesting. That's the type of, when I say the new contexts are more difficult to measure, that's almost exactly what I'm talking about. Like if we think about influencers, like the impact of influencers overall, not an easy thing to measure from a brand perspective. There are some ways to do it, but it does seem like a really it does seem like a really challenging thing to be able to do consistently over time. When I was focusing more on the influencer analysis side of things back in my previous job, one of the ways we were able to look at it was how how basically influencer posts within a specific feed engage at a different level relative to what would be expected based on historical behavior as a way to understand overall lift. But even that, I think, was probably short of what would actually be necessary to understand the type of impact that Renee was talking about. Like, it wouldn't give us sort of the ability to understand sort of why Simple grew up or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This sounds like a good time to bring in Ken Archer, who is SVP of Product at Upwave. And Upwave is the sponsor of our episode. And Ken, I know you have a few thoughts. Why don't you introduce yourself and say hello to the panel?
Thanks, Rick. I'm with Upwave, the brand intelligence platform. We're really excited to sponsor the Wonks and this particular panel. A great group of people with John, Vadim, and Renee assembled here today.
We've had a number of conversations about these kinds of measurement techniques. I think he's very comfortable in a post-cookie world, if I'm not mistaken. And I think you want to talk about measuring in some other media types. And so, Ken, take it away.
There's so much exciting innovation out there in measurement. There's a lot that's going on with clean rooms. Even within clean rooms, there is a lot of innovation that has gone way beyond what we think of as clean room, like with Ads Data Hub, like stuff that Snowflake and InfoSum and other companies are working on. But then also, a lot of media companies are innovating in their own measurement platforms. And it's, not just to control the data, but because they actually want to build a privacy safe, measurement environment where, brands can actually learn more than they could before. And so if we think so much of like, all right, how are we going to make it through the next quarter, the next year, given the platform changes? But if you look forward more like 5 years, 7, 8 years, like, what do you think measurement could look like?
I just wanted to jump in and say, like, I think that a lot of people are concerned right now, and we're hearing a lot of things like MTA is going away, it's dead, right? And it's not that MTA is going away. I agree with you, Ken. It's that it will be built in clean rooms like advanced analytics and ADH and those types of environments. And you can still conduct a brand impact survey on an identity basis and use those results, right? But the challenge is the fragmentation. And Omnicom has been getting behind the smaller publisher adoption of, for example, the identity consortium offered through UID 2.0 and OpenPass, which is essentially a single sign-on solution where, to Vadim's point earlier, it aims to make the user experience better. So instead of a consumer having to go to each individual publisher to consume the content that they want and have to go through the series of consent management with cookies and everything that they deal with today, they would give an email login and there would be a consortium of smaller publishers that come together and they can access content on all of those sites wherever those publishers are. So it thereby reduces the friction in the consumer experience and accepting all these different formats that they were doing before. And in exchange for that data, they just have to, or that content rather, they just have to sign in once. So to me, that's a great consumer solution, thinking about it from the consumer sentiment point of view. But while we don't expect full coverage, I do think solutions like these are enabling individual opted-in insight, which is what the whole point of the Privacy Acts are about, right?
John, do podcasts present a particular challenge in this context, or where do you see yourselves in a few years in terms of these kind of measurements, or even today?
when we look sort of across media, and we look sort of 5 years into the future, I think we're really seeing sort of two different trends or two different challenges right now that we're grappling with. One is to the point that was brought up earlier, we do see the continued growth of our first party solutions as being the primary direction that we're headed, and being able to build a suite of tools and services both for our advertising agency clients to be able to work with us, to be able to better understand sort of how well the platform works. And that's our long-term goal. It sort of fits with generally the direction that the rest of the market is going. And we think that given sort of the privacy concerns of the market, that's the most sensible way, the most sensible direction to roll. That's sort of one direction. The other direction that was brought up by the rest of the panel, which I think is critical, is new growth in clean rooms. Because while we do imagine and we do hope that the majority of work that we do is going to be able to be first party, to be able to drive the value for our clients, we do think using clean rooms, and they still need a lot of work to where we'd be comfortable working with them and more actively across most partners. But using a clean room allows us to get to a place where we feel that we'll be in a data safe environment to be able to match data with either agencies or with our clients. So that's sort of one set of challenges that we're dealing with. The other one that you brought up was podcasts. Podcasts, to be incredibly generous, are working on archaic technology. So the way that podcasts operate is that most people consume podcasts through what is in essence an RSS feed, which has no return path from a data perspective. What that means is that for the most part, the only type of tracking that's available for most podcasts is some type of IP and device matching to another party, which is tends to be a very low quality, and tends to frankly be quite difficult to interpret from a data perspective. So what our hope is over time is that two things will happen in podcasts. One is that we will move to a standard across podcast measurement, where if we are going to stay with IP and user agent as the primary matching technology, we're working with a third party to make sure that to turn those IP, and user agents into people as a critical path. And the second is an industry overall beginning to move off of the RSS feed as a backbone, particularly for ad serving, and focus more on what is closer to a standard digital advertising model, which would be streaming. Which is the way we serve generally our ads, and we imagine that the rest of the marketplace will too, primarily due to how measurable the units are when streaming. We'll see what happens though. Technology is slow to move, and podcast technology particularly is very slow to move in the market.
And Vadim, why don't you seem to be specializing in, I don't know, what do you call the category? I want to say merchant media.
Retail.
Retail. All right. What do you see there in that kind of time horizon?
Retail, in principle, retail media is the most measurable place, obviously, because retailers have their own data. Targeting of that data is the most effective, efficient way for the brands. And retailers, especially, and I would say that that's another unique thing about Instacart is that it's a think about it as a subscription business. People go there regularly and buy regularly all the grocery products. So it's not just that they're logged in. There is a lot of data. The customers purchase their products regularly, every week, every 2 weeks. So there is a lot of data. And because right now, at least, everything is limited and lives within the system has data, has ability to target, has ability, or supposedly should have the ability to target, should have the ability to measure things, and has all the data that's needed. Obviously, brands want to look beyond that system. They want to look at what the impact of the ads served on Instacart is on retail, on physical retail stores, because people who buy online also buy in stores. They want in-store data to feed into the data that we have so that they could drive exploration, discovery, exploration, new stuff happening on this platform. Measurement, while we are talking about measurement, and you can talk about it as being easy, it's always not easy, easy. Attribution may be easy here, but as I said, advertisers that aren't particularly interested in attribution. Measuring the effect of all ads is not an easy thing, and it's a good playground for studying what new methods and new methodologies and figuring out how to balance the value, the advertiser value and customer value and Instacart value. These are all those economics questions that are playing into what we are doing, how we are measuring things, how we are making those trade-offs. These are all very interesting questions that I'm sure Amazon is asking itself of too. And we are thinking about going beyond Instacart and advertising off Instacart. In that case, we have to be able to figure out how to expand this. And any data that and any measurement that will be happening outside of Instacart, or any data coming in or coming out of Instacart, will have to use clean rooms. And we are obviously I in particular, but we are all very interested in those technologies and talking to the partners and looking at various new development in that areas, because that is the way to protect customer data, to protect first-party data from publishers' data on the one hand, on the other hand, and to enable measurement and analytics in a safe way. So, yeah.
All right. Well, I think with 5 years, we've got just the right crew here to crack the nut and solve all these problems. So on behalf of the Research Wonks, I know you're all active members there. I thank you for that. And I thank you very much for your participation today. Renee, John, Vadim, Ken, really appreciate you all joining. And we'll keep the conversation going online and face-to-face before we can think twice.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank
All
you
right,
so
thank you,
much.
everybody.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
That was really a great conversation. And if you've made it to the end of this episode, you too should be a wonk. So go to researchwonks.com and apply for membership.
That's right. And thanks again to our sponsor, Upwave. We appreciate your support. And thanks to you, the viewers, who show an interest in what we're talking about. We'll see you in our next episode.
Bye-bye.